All right, good morning, everybody. Reckless love right there. That one, you can meditate on that one for a while, you know. What we didn't do yesterday is I forgot that, we got some people from the Dominican Republic in the house. Do we have our Dominican brothers and sisters? Are you guys here anywhere? Over there, appreciate you guys. Coming all the way. Thank you guys for being here. Bienvenidos, to all of us, to Indianapolis. Starbucks card, I'll have to go buy one myself and give it to you, which I'll do probably, maybe. We'll see, Morning, everybody. Hope you had a good sleep last night and you're ready for another full day. My name is Nick. This is my incredible team, my wife, Brie, and our partner, Melissa. We live down in Atlanta. This is our family. We love partnering together. We love being in this together. Brie and I have been doing this for about 6 years in this role. Melissa's been kind of full-time 8 years, 12 years in this role. And, and so we just love partnering together, And so, and we're really excited to share about that partnership a little bit together, about how do we partner together as youth and family ministries, children's ministries, and just be a great team, together. But first, I had a question. Do we have any, if you are the oldest sibling in your family, can you raise your hand? The oldest sibling? All right. If you're the youngest sibling, can you raise your hand? And if you're, okay, let's go over to No, if we got any middle siblings in the house, where are you guys at? All right. You got to shout out our middle siblings. So Melissa and I, we're older siblings. And so, for us, we're responsible, always take care, of everybody. We think through things, that kind of thing. And, Brie's a younger sibling. She's the youngest sibling, which, she's way more fun. She's the favorite, but, can also get herself into some trouble sometimes. And you got to watch out for her. So there's this one story of Brie, when her family lived in Bolivia. Brie was going on a prayer walk up in the Bolivian mountains, all right? Whenever your youngest sibling says, I'm going to go on a prayer walk, you just got to make sure you have their location, on your phone, because you're not totally sure what happened. So Brie is kind of on this prayer walk and hiking up through, these remote Bolivian mountains by herself. And then later in the day, I get this picture. So Brie, of course, was hiking. She looked up and saw a cool overlook spot that would be really cool to connect with God, kind of thing. And so she's up there on her way back down, slips and falls 20 feet to the ground, hits the ground, blacks out. She gets up 20 minutes later, head bleeding, concussion, wrist throbbing. She's in the middle of a nowhere mountain trail, has to figure out her way back. Eventually, she makes it down, back to the street, has to flag down a taxi. Of course, when that taxi guy comes up, he's like, "Oh, hospital, she's like, no, take me to my dad. He ran a clinic, out there in Bolivia. Take me to my dad's clinic." And so shows up at the clinic. Of course, you're just trying to hold it together. You're trying not to, you don't know who's going to run into you. And, she's just trying to hold it together, adrenaline pumping. And but then her dad walks into the room, and that's when she loses it. That's when the tears come. That's when she knows that her safe expert is here. Because, there's a moment when you're in distress, when you're having a hard time, when you're feeling beat up, when the one who can fix it walks into the room, you feel okay. It feels calm. You're able to really be yourself. And then when we look through the Gospels, Jesus, there's moments where he comes upon crowds. You remember how when he looks at those crowds, how he views them? Harassed, helpless, lost, aimless. And you know what his solution is? They need a shepherd. They need a shepherd. Matthew 9, of course, we love that passage. And you see this all throughout the Bible. Ezekiel chapter 34, you read that passage, it is a scathing rebuke, that God has for the leaders of Israel, saying, you guys were supposed to shepherd my people, but you've only kind of fed yourselves. I need to go shepherd my people. I'm going to take them back. I'm going to rescue them. Because God is obsessed with making sure we're shepherded, making sure we're cared for. And you see that all throughout the scriptures. God says, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to go and do it myself. And I'm not just a shepherd, that is kind of in the distance. I'm going to lay down my life for my sheep. And we see, of course, there's two main relationships. We see primary relationships that God uses, or Jesus picks up for his relationship between God and humans. One is, of course, the parent and child relationship. We see all over the scriptures. And the other big one is the sheep and the shepherd relationship. And I love those because they're both about intentional, sacrificial presence, care. And during this conference, I've loved it because we've been going through these different names, and one thing I love about them is that they're all relational. Each one reveals something about how God connects with his people. And the name we're going to be looking at today is this idea of Jehovah Rohi. The Lord is my shepherd. And it's only used once in all the scriptures, and that's in Psalm 23, as David is reflecting on his relationship with his creator. And so we're going to be looking at Psalm 23 for kind of the first part of what we do together. And the second part is going to be talking about how do we become great partners as we try to shepherd others. And so, but here in Psalm chapter 23, it starts with, the Lord is my shepherd. I was trying to pray through this psalm a lot over the last couple of weeks, and it took me a while just to get past these first 5 words. Because all you have to say is, the Lord is my shepherd. And you can just repeat that. The Lord is my shepherd? Wait, the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord's my shepherd. The Lord, the creator who spoke the universe into existence, who's compassionate and gracious and abounding in love and faithfulness, that Lord, he's my shepherd. He's not just some distant God out there somewhere. He's mine. It's like saying, that's my person. Or I love when I walk into my daughter's preschool and she's like, that's my daddy, that's my daddy. It's just like the best feeling of all time right there, Or, I remember when I got married to Brie, I'm like, that's my wife. Like, that was just kind of a crazy statement, to make. But that idea of like, something is mine is such a intimate and incredible word. And you can almost hear David boasting about it a little bit as he's saying it. He's talking to all the other sheep that don't have that shepherd. And he's like, you know who my shepherd is? My shepherd is the Lord. Are you kidding me? I don't know who your shepherd is, but mine, he's mine. He bought me. He cares for me. And then the Lord is my shepherd. He's not my master. He's not my general. He's not my boss. He's my shepherd. And that book, I know a lot of us have read it. It's, a shepherd, what's it called? A shepherd looks at Psalm 23. It's a must read. Opens your eyes to what this, relationship is like. But sheep, as the book points out, are some of the most high maintenance, of all the animals. They're not dumb like we always talk about. Sheep are actually pretty smart, but they're definitely pretty high maintenance. And how they do is directly correlated to the care of their shepherd. If you have a bad shepherd, you can tell which sheep those are. They're anxious, they're scared, they're frail, they're kind of like, But when you have a good shepherd, you got a fat old sheep. They're like, you can tell, who you got with a good shepherd. For a shepherd, there's a lot of money to invest and purchase a flock of sheep. And so when it came into your care, it was a big deal, for you. You paid a heavy price. You laid your blood, sweat, and tears, on the line for that. And when they come into your care, just like when you have a kid, it's not like, wow, we birthed the kid, great. Nope, a daily now decision every day to lay down your life for now what's in your care. And of course, Jesus picks this phrase up in the Gospels. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And I love that with Jesus. He's like, I'm not like those bad shepherds out there. You know how I treat my sheep? I lay down my life for them. I care for them. I'm not neglecting them. I'm not in this for me. I'm the good shepherd. I lay down my life for them. And it's those words from David, the Lord is my shepherd, is what, to me, it's him saying, I am so lucky. I have a shepherd who would lay down his very life for me. And when you understand that, when you understand who's really leading you, it makes sense that his next words would be, you know what? I lack nothing. I lack nothing. Now, here's the problem for us sometimes. That line, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing, is really nice to say. It sounds really good. Makes us feel really good. but it is so hard to believe. It is so hard to believe because, of course, when life gets stressful, overwhelming, painful things happen, our minds immediately go to if only. If only I had this kind of situation. If only I had these kind of resources. If only I had this kind of upbringing. It goes back to that all the time. It's so easy to slip into that. Honestly, for me, this is a daily battle for me. You know, I kind of feel like this in life, like I've been given a lot. But when it comes to like being in the ministry, I feel like I feel the lack all the time. Because let's be real, every event you do with teenagers or youth, you are given plenty of evidence to be discouraged. You are given plenty of evidence. There's always something. There's always that kid that walks in with his headphones on. You try so hard to be there for it. They just don't want it. They don't give a flip, about you. Or the parent that's hurting, you just can't quite help them. The student who made the bad decision, again, or kids that have been coming around for so long and they just don't want God, and you're like, why? I feel like we've kind of tried everything. Or, those events that you spend hours preparing for, you got a babysitter for that night, and then the teens talk about how boring it was, the rest of the week and stuff like that. Or, certain teens that come and say, hey, when did you start balding? That's always a great, kind of thing. That was actually Melissa's son. That was a really great, conversation together with me, taking random shots. But there's always something, and I'm tempted to think all the time, I'm not doing enough, and I can't be what everybody needs. I'm not doing enough, and I can't be what everybody needs. One of the parts of my personality, I'm an Enneagram 3, shout out to Enneagram 3s out there, is that my thing is I deeply want to come through for people. I want to be what they need. And when I start realizing that I can't be what people need, I start getting exasperated. And I'm amazed at how my first reaction can start being like when people ask for help, I'm like, all right, just another person I have to come through for. Another person I got to come through for, and I just can't do it. When I think that way, it just saps all the joy out of ministry for me. And then I start operating from this place more. Instead of love, I start operating from a place of, I don't want to disappoint people. And that is a terrible place to work from in the ministry. Because it means that I'm putting myself in the place of the shepherd. I'm not the shepherd. I'm just the sheep. It's not my job to fix every problem, feed every person, carry every burden. That's his job. And I've had to get comfortable with this truth in the ministry. I'm probably always going to disappoint somebody. I'm always going to disappoint somebody, And that's okay. Now I got to choose who I'm not okay disappointing, like my kids, and my wife, in the sense of like I need to be there and locked in with them and some chosen, friends, but I can't be that for everybody. Jesus disappointed people. And hopefully, I just want to lift that burden from you in the room right now. You're going to disappoint people. You're going to disappoint people. And that's okay. And so let's not live overly worried about it. Because it's so easy to live overly worried about it. And it's fine, because people aren't supposed to put their trust in me. They're supposed to put it in the shepherd. And if I don't stop and intentionally choose to put on that mindset, I feel the lack almost every day. Every day I need to get up and put on the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing glasses on. And when I do that, it actually makes my job so much fun. So much fun. And honestly, for me personally, I tend to be overly dutiful, or responsible in my role. I'm I've been given so much, there's a lot of responsibility. I need to do a good job. I need to work on just having more fun in my role. There's a quote that I love from this book. It's a book called Sacred Fire. And at the end of the book, it talks about 10 markers of a spiritual person. And the first rule is this one. It says, live in gratitude and thank your Creator by enjoying your life. I gave we got our daughter a trampoline recently, right? Which of course is you're taking your life into your hands sometimes with that. At least at 3.5, she's still kind of, she can't get to her at this point. But, I gave her that trampoline, and the way that she can thank me for that trampoline is not by just telling me thank you 100 times. The way that she can thank me by that trampoline is wearing that thing out. The more performances that she does in that trampoline, the more I feel like she's been grateful, for it. And the more that I am so pleased, by that. I don't want her to say, Daddy, thank you for this trampoline, but I know you've given me so much, and I don't want to have something else that I have, and I know other kids don't have trampolines, so I'm just not going to use it. That's not No, I gave you this trampoline. I want you to totally enjoy it. And I think for us, too often, we've been, and I don't know as ministers if we feel this, but of course, we're supposed to take our job seriously, but sometimes we can get maybe a little bit too overly responsible or too overly kind of dutiful or too overly like, this is hard. And I think God has given us so much. The shepherd, again, has given us so much. And I think he wants us to say, hey, you lack nothing. Just go enjoy. Go enjoy it. I'm going to take care, of the rest of this stuff. Because if we really lack nothing, then we're going to have so much fun, doing this together. I really believe that enjoying your shepherd is going to make you the best minister you can be. I am the best minister when I totally enjoy my shepherd. When I'm enjoying his presence, that bleeds out that flows out of me into everybody else. And you can tell, those people, they just love walking with God. They just enjoy it. It just oozes out of them. You want to be around them. It makes you trust, a lot of the things that they say. I'm the best minister when I'm just enjoying, my presence with the shepherd. And so I think you're going to have to figure out what makes you enjoy God. What makes you enjoy him? And prioritize that. I just feel God's favor. And I enjoy God's presence the most. Because if you have that in there, it's going to make who you are as a minister, the best you can be. But if I feel that, I know that every day, the parents we work with, the kids we work with, they feel the lack all the time. And I feel like one of my responsibilities as a minister, because of course you have parents that are like, I can't really be what I need to be for my kids. Or they don't think I'm this way or that way. And there's a lot of lack that they feel. And I feel like one of my main jobs is to talk to the parent and say, God made you the exact parent you need to be for your kids. He put you there. There is a hole that is in your kid that will never be filled by a cool youth leader. That is always going to be filled by their parents. They need you. You are exactly who they need to be. You lack nothing. And then for the kid, the student that walks in, they feel the lack all the time. It's like, God made you exactly who you're supposed to be. You lack nothing. Reminding them. I feel like that's such an important, I don't know why the lackluster kept coming to my mind. I was like, we need to be lackbusters. And I think that was only in my mind just because my daughter's been obsessed with Ghostbusters for Halloween and lackbusters, anyway. So we won't go, that way. But we do, to me, one of our most important roles in the ministry is being lackbusters, okay? Is going out and just saying, we're getting rid of this lack. We have a shepherd. We lack absolutely nothing. My anchor scripture for the ministry is Jesus feeding the 5,000, where Jesus says, hey, people are hungry. What do you have to give them? And they say, we don't have the money. He says, well, I didn't ask that question. I said, what do you have? What do you have? Bring it to me. I got plenty. Give it to me. You lack nothing. And watch what I do with that. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing.
This next part, I love how specific David gets. He's like, okay, God is my shepherd. I lack nothing. And you know what? Here's some specific ways he shepherds me. He's like gushing. He's like, look at what he does for me. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. It's like that old poem, like, how do I love thee? Let me count the way. Let me tell you ways that I love you. But sometimes I think we need to get specific. Like Nick said, like, what a beautiful phrase. God is my shepherd. I lack nothing. But sometimes we got to get specific. Like, how is he shepherding me? Let me write them down. Let me get specific. Let me count the ways. There's this like part of our brain, probably most of you could explain this better than I could. There's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. Anybody heard of it? Where it's like the part of your brain that seeks out information that you're looking for, right? So if you've ever been like shopping for a car and then you start noticing those cars everywhere, right? Like Toyota, right? So that's like reticular activating system working, right? So in other words, you find what you're looking for, right? If you're looking for the color red, you start noticing the color red everywhere. So in other words, the more specific we get of like, here's God shepherding me, oh, he's making me lie down and great, the more you notice, right? And the more we count the ways, the more we see, wow, he's really doing it. He's really shepherding me. So I love how specific David gets here, and just like what beautiful line, he makes me lie down in green pastures. Where he wrote this in Palestine was like arid, dry, brown. Green pastures, we think of like lush rolling hills like Ireland, but that's not really what's in his mind as he's writing this. He makes me lie down where there's enough food for me. There's patches of green. Like the shepherd is so smart and knows exactly how many sheep he has and how much food they need. And he would lead them to the place where they would have exactly the amount that they needed, right? And he would lead them from area to area going, and not just the amount they needed to be full, but to be full enough to lay down, right? Like a sheep doesn't lie down if they're still hungry. A sheep is lying down because they're fully satisfied. And so the shepherds are so smart where they're like, hey, I know exactly what you need, and not just enough to scrape by, but I know exactly what you need to be fully satisfied to lay down. And sometimes I think, especially in the ministry, like Nick says, there's always things we could look for to find lack. And sometimes we think it needs to look like this lush, rolling green hill, to really relax. And God's like, don't you trust where I've led you? Like, I've led you to just the spot with I know you. I know what you need. I know exactly how many sheep are in this flock. And I know what you need. And I've led you to just the right amount and just the right resources, not just to have what you need and scrape by, but to lay down and to relax. And that really helps me when I look at my ministry and to go, the exact families are in this ministry right now for a reason. And I am in this exact ministry right now for a reason. I have to trust kind of that 1 Corinthians 12 perspective where he says he's arranged each part of the body exactly where he wants it to be. I have to trust that he's a good shepherd and he's led me right where he wants me to be. And then he says he leads me beside quiet waters. And of course, when you see quiet waters, in the scriptures, you think of the Spirit, right? And how often the Spirit and the waters are connected in the scripture. And it makes me think of, and Jesus is like John 7, hey, whoever believes in me, whoever's thirsty, come to me. If you believe in me, rivers of living water will flow from within you. Like, I have given you, those who have the Holy Spirit, it is within you, and it's this river. It's this ever-flowing, gushing fountain of life, rivers of living water from within you. Like, God isn't leading me to this faraway river, right? That's like, wow, he's leading me beside quiet waters that are way, way over there. Or, wow, I see the waters are over there. No, he said, no, they're within me. I already have within me the quiet waters. I have that inside me already. In Galatians 5, I feel like it's the most encouraging line ever for me, where he's like, walk by the Spirit and you won't gratify the desires of the flesh. It's like, thank you, God. Like, keep in step with the rivers inside you. Keep in step, keep listening. And you won't. Like, whatever you're afraid of in yourself that you're going to gratify, you won't. Like, trust me. You have the rivers inside. Keep in step. I've got you. I'm shepherding you from within. I'm shepherding your people from within. Just listen to me. We already have what we need inside us. And I think that Romans 8, to me, that's like this idea of like the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. That image is a sheep laying down. Like, I'm good. I am at peace. I can lay down. I am fully satisfied. The mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. And I love how Jesus has fulfilled the reality of this psalm in giving us the gift of the Holy Spirit. Like, internally, I give you the gift of quiet waters. And lastly, he says he refreshes my soul. And I love that word refresh. Other translations say renew or restore or even like return. He returns my soul to me. Like, that's such a cool image of like, yeah, oh yeah, I'm me. Oh yeah, I'm me. I'm just me. Like, I'm a child. I'm his kid. Oh yeah, I can be his kid. He returns my soul to me. But I really love the translation of refreshed, because it just makes you feel like, don't you love that word refreshed? Like, it makes you feel like, wow, a glass of cold water when you're really thirsty, or like when you take a shower after a long day and your whole body's just like, man, it feels good. I feel refreshed. Like, that's how God wants me to feel in his presence. He wants me to be like relaxed in his presence. And I've learned, like Nick said, like the best way for me to show up in the ministry is to be refreshed by God. I really love how Randy and Kim, a couple days ago, yesterday? Long days, man. Yesterday morning, how they alluded to, like, there's a difference between spending time, like having your quiet time for God and having your quiet time with God, right? Like, there's a difference between reading your Bible for God and like relaxing and reading with him. And for me, I feel like this is like I think it's something a lot of us are practicing, and the Spirit is totally moving and trying to form us to go deeper with him. And I feel like I'm practicing it. I'm definitely like in the beginning of the journey, but I'm growing. I'm starting to enjoy just really resting in God's presence. And so wherever you're at when you're hearing this psalm, like whatever's hitting your heart, I hope you hear God has given you everything you need, just the right amount of green pasture, reminding you of the quiet waters within you, because your soul can be refreshed, renewed, restored right now. And so maybe you're like me and you need to hear this, but like, let him do that. Let him lead you there. And then David ends this part with saying, he guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. And like Nick said, like shepherds pay a huge price for their sheep, right? Like Jesus obviously paid the ultimate price for all of us, for our ministry. He bought us. He's not a hired hand. He super de-duper cares about how we're doing. Like he is very invested in our well-being and in the well-being of the ministry that I lead. And that like makes all the difference right there in how I minister. Like, wow, God really cares about their well-being more than I ever will. And so for his name's sake, he's going to lead these people either through me or despite me. Like, I just trust that. Like, in spite of me and despite my weaknesses, my arrogance, whatever, you will lead them. You care a lot more about me. I love how Olivia said it last night. I just got to show up and trust. And I think, and I love how Paul talks in 1 Corinthians 2, where he says, my message and my preaching, we're not with wise and eloquent, persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power. Dallas Willard, a well-known author, he apparently said, what happens between my lips and their ears, that's all the work of the Spirit. Like, that's the Spirit's arena. And so I do my best, but don't trust my best. And that line, like, relieves me in ministry. I do my best, but I don't trust my best. Of course, I want to show up and give my whole heart. I want to be generous. I want to be engaged. I want to fully love people, but I'm not putting my trust in that. I'm putting my trust that for his name's sake, he's going to lead these people. I feel like recently I've experienced that a lot of joy and freedom in ministry, doing it with God rather than for God, especially as a mom. And so I'm just going to share like an example of a moment. Like this could have been a snapshot from any one of many of our lives. Any of you guys with young kids or had young kids at one point while you're trying to minister to other people, this is going to be relatable. But this was just like a couple weeks ago. A teen girl was coming over, and she had a really heavy week. She had run away from home and had considered, taking her life when she ran away. So this is a few days after that really dark day for her, and she's coming over to my house and coming over to talk. And so, of course, I'm like, man, God, please give her what she needs. I'm ready. I'm really grateful she's coming over. I want to receive her. I want to be, a great listening ear. I have both my kids with me, 3 and 8 months. And like the 3-year-old was on like level 10 this day, like you guys know what I mean? She was on like level 10. And then right before the teen walks in, my baby like projectile vomits everywhere, all over the table. Like it's like, not to be TMI, it's like dripping off the table. I mean, it's good, it's yuck. And so that's right before she walks in the door. So I text her, I was like, hey, I'm gonna put the kids in the bath, let yourself in, just come on in, right? And so she walks in, and I just like, hey, can you take the baby real quick? And but it's one of those beforehand. I'd just been praying a lot, like God, I'm gonna do my best, but not trust my best. Just Jesus, tell me what to say. Jesus, tell me what to ask. Will you tell me what to ask, Jesus? Like, will you tell me like? Use my facial expressions, use my lack of facial expressions, like use whatever, like use the vomit, like use whatever. Once again, toddlers bouncing around, and, at one point the teen's sharing, about some of her feelings. She was talking about the night a few days ago where she was saying, wow, I was really afraid. And it's like this, she's crying, saying, I was really afraid of myself. I was afraid of Satan. My daughter pops up, she's like, what were you afraid of? And then she's like, what were you afraid of when you were a kid? What pretend thing were you not afraid of when you were a kid? She's just asking all these questions. And I was like, God, use that. I don't know, maybe she needs a pattern interrupt, right, from this moment. I don't know. But the whole time, I was so relaxed. And that's just not how ministry's been before that for me. Like, this is a new practice for me of like, God, I totally trust you are going to use whatever. And at one point, we're talking, and I could tell God really being like, hey, read the prodigal son with her. Like, I really want her to hear this part of my heart for her. And so I'm, like, okay, cool. I'll read Luke 15 with her. But then the baby starts really needing to go down for a nap. And so I was like, hey, I need to go put the baby down. It'll be a few minutes. And my daughter's just like clamoring, like, Mom, read a book with me, read a book with me, read it. And I keep telling her, hey, in a minute, right? When she's gone, we'll read a book. And I'm like, hey, I got to go put the baby down. I was like, Mari, can you grab your storybook Bible? And can you flip to Luke 15? And hey, teen, can you read this with her real quick? This is what I wanted to read with you anyway. I got to go put the baby down. Can you read the storybook version of Luke 15 and have fun? And, and so I take the baby, I'm rocking him down. And of course, he's taking a really long time. It's like 15. And I am like, God, I trust you. I don't need to be in there. Like, whatever, Of course, they never ended up reading it together. Mari really wanted to read The Incredibles, and so then we read it together, and that was all fun. Because we're reading it together, and then Mari looks at me, she's like, I thought you were going to read it to me, Mom, not her. And I was just like, okay. But, we read the storybook version, which probably was easier for her to digest, right? But all of it to say, I was just like, God, for your name's sake, you will lead her. Like, you will give her what she needs. And I'm able to do my best, not trust my best. I'm able to relax into that and show up with exactly what I got, exactly what I don't have, and like be really comfortable with my limitations, because for his name's sake, he will lead our people. And so God will lead you down the right paths, and sometimes those paths can be really challenging, and I'm going to let Melissa share.
Yeah, so, even I have the next section here. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. There are times in my life where I have experienced those, seasons of green meadows, right, and calm waters. And it's in those that I have tried to really draw near to God. But then there have also been those seasons of dark valleys, and I know you guys can relate to that as well. There have been ongoing and recent challenges in my family of origin that are deeply painful. I experienced many years of infertility. I know some of you may have walked through that. Challenges in my marriage, trauma in childbirth with my middle child, watching friends and family walk away from God, walking with family through addiction. But most recently this year, I've been going through a dark valley that I wanted to share about. But before I share my story, I did just want to acknowledge that I know many of you are probably also walking through different seasons, and maybe even also times of green meadows. And some perhaps experience dark times that far surpass what I'm going to share about. But I just wanted to give you a little snapshot of what I've been walking through this year and kind of how I've been doing that. So I want to share about the dark valley miracles that God has done in my life this year. So I was having severe migraines, and my neurologist sent me for an MRI just to be sure, and she discovered a benign brain tumor called a meningioma. She then sent me to a neurosurgeon, and he immediately told me it was inoperable. He said no one would operate on this, ever. Like, I would bleed to death if they opened that part of the skull. So he sent me to a radiation oncologist to begin radiation treatment. I went into the doctor's office, and before I even saw the doctor, the nurse went into, here are all the side effects you're going to face from radiation. I was like, oh, can I meet the doctor first? I remember telling my husband, have we decided on radiation? Is this a definite? Terrible fatigue, nausea, vomiting, hair loss. The doctor described how lucky I was that they found this tumor before it could wreak havoc on my brain. So although my tumor is benign, it's in a very dangerous location. But my first miracle during this season was that they found the tumor before I lost my vision, my sight. We decided to get a second opinion, and the second doctor just happened to be the leading expert in brain meningiomas in Atlanta, who took my insurance, who just happened to have an opening in his schedule a week later due to a cancellation. I'll never forget when he handed me his business card and it said, Director of Radiation Oncology for Emory University. I didn't even know he was the director. That was miracle number 2. God got me to the right doctor at the right time. And Dr. Hugh agreed I needed immediate radiation. So he explained that my tumor was 1 or 2 millimeters away from my cervical and optical nerves. If it grew at all, it would take my vision. He told me that I was one of the few patients he had ever met who had a tumor in this location who wasn't already blind. So radiation of my brain was scheduled for 2 weeks away while the doctors met with neuroscientists and the nuclear radiosurgeons to determine the best type of treatment. And it was decided that I would receive 5 sessions of high-dose radiation to kill and shrink the tissue. My friends and family at North River were incredible, driving my 3 kids to dance and basketball and football and ballet and meals. It was amazing. And that's the miracle number 3, the care of my village. When you go into radiation, they make a custom mask that fits over your face, and then you lie down in the machine and they buckle your head onto the table so that you can't move. And then they close this extremely heavy door, and they're like, okay, you're good in there, but we can't be anywhere near you. So you're strapped to the table, and I'll show you in a minute what it looks like. But, when you give birth, you're surrounded by doctors. Even in C-section, your spouse usually is by your head. But it's dangerous for anyone to be in the room with you during radiation. They have cameras that monitor your eye movement, trying to predict if you might sneeze or if you might move or flinch. And I remember the terror. What if I do move? Are they going to delete my brain? Like, what would happen? Are they going to laser, like, my whole personality? I've never been more alone as I watched the lasers move around my skull. I remember the smell. That's the worst part, is the smell. The sounds. It was the darkest valley I've walked in so far. Tears would run down my face into my eyes. And as I laid there alone in the silence, I sang Reckless Love. I remember thinking, you chase me down, God. You leave the 99. I know you are here. In that dark valley, I truly had no one but God. And the comfort that only God can provide did wash over me and comfort me. It didn't remove my fear. His comfort came alongside my heart in response to him. He stilled me. And I remember getting up and immediately feeling the nausea and the headache. But later, my doctor told me it was probably my body's reaction to fear, not the radiation causing that headache. My body was in such a severe state of panic, but my mind and my heart were at peace. Miracle number 4 was the comfort God provided me as my true shepherd that I could physically feel in the machine. So this is a picture of each of my treatments, just so you can kind of imagine, what I'm walking through here. So in each of my subsequent sessions, they would play music for me in the room. They were like, oh, we didn't mean to make it silent. Gee, thanks. So I chose a song, and it was called The Story I'll Tell by Naomi Raine. And please listen to it later. It's incredible. It has meant everything to me in this season. But I want to share the lyrics with you. Before I do, I'll just show you a picture of my tumor. This is probably going to be with me for a while, and that's what the machine's like. They buckle you down onto the table, and they strap your hands down, and so you're really, really not moving, and then you watch the lasers move, so it's wild. But I did just want to share with you the lyrics to this song, because they've really convicted me and helped me so much. It says, the hour is dark, and it's hard to see what you are doing here in the ruins and where this will lead. Oh, but I know that down through the years, I'll look on this moment and see your hand on it, and I'll know you were here. And I'll testify of the battles you've won. You were my portion when there wasn't enough. And I'll testify of the seas that we've crossed, the waters you parted, the waves that I've walked. My God did not fail. It's the story I'll tell. Believing gets hard when options are few. When I can't see what you're doing, I know that you're proving you're the God who comes through. And this song would literally blare in the room while I was having radiation each time. And sometimes I'd get home and I'd feel really sick, and my kids knew that this was my song. And I remember one time my daughter came in and she was like, "Are you feeling okay, Mom?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You need your song. Alexa, play," So even my kids were able to learn that God is the one who's with you in the valley. And this is why we stay close to God and walk with Jesus, our shepherd, because you don't know when your next dark valley is going to come. I just had a headache and went to the doctor. I didn't know what was coming. But if we don't walk closely with him in the meadows and beside calm waters, when you're in the valley, you can't find him. When it gets dark, how do you find him? Some of us might be in dark valleys right now. God is with you. Draw near to him. He is your portion when there isn't enough. What in your life does it feel like there isn't enough of? What battles has God won in your life? God does not fail. I wanted to provide for you all these different scriptures from a study I've been doing on God's miracles. So if you want to screenshot this, I needed a lot of scriptures to walk through this time. But I just want to encourage you to feel free to take a picture of this because God's miracles are everywhere. And I want to ask you this morning, has God stopped doing miracles? Or are we too busy to see them? All these pictures I took, why did I take pictures out front of the office? Because this is one of the stories I'll tell. A testimony of the God who comforted me. He didn't remove the tumor, but he held me close in that radiation machine every time. And even now, when I get headaches and I have to do neuro checks, and I go in for MRIs every 3 to 6 months, God's rod is there to comfort me. Radiation didn't shrink my tumor, as I had hoped that it would, but we have every reason to believe that it has halted the tissue for now. And my story with this tumor is likely not over, but I'm able to look at my life and say, God has done miracles, he does not fail, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever.
It reminds me of moments where my daughter is scared and she just wants to hold my hand. And I think as a dad, there's nothing you want to do more than hold your kid's hand when they're walking through dark or tough moments. And so I just am really thankful and just watching Melissa and how she's walked through that over the last few years and the many things that she didn't share, just trying to hold God's hand, or the Zentenos and Bridget, what you guys shared last night, and just trying to hold on to God's hand in the midst of challenges and valleys. I'm so grateful for our shepherd who wants to go through those moments with us. The psalm closes out, and we won't go too deep into this, but, it's interesting that after that valley passage, he says, you anoint my head with oil. It's like a healing part of what the shepherd does. Anoints the sheep with oil, keeps the pests out, and I think a lot of times I think of that moment with Peter where Jesus says, I need to wash your feet. Peter's like, you can't wash my feet. And there's something vulnerable about getting healed and washed and anointed, and Jesus is like, if I don't wash your feet, you got no part with me. Sometimes we just got to let God heal us. We got to sit still. We got to stay with him for a while and just let his oil just cover us, heal us, and be a balm, for us. Then I love just how it talks about surely your goodness and your love will follow us all the days of our life. I think about 2 bodyguards that God has set up for us. His goodness and his loving kindness. And he says, it doesn't matter what you do, those things are going to be chasing you everywhere you go. If you run away from me, goodness and loving kindness are going to be following you. And in moments where we're afraid or we're having a tough time, the 2 things we need to know the most is that God is good and that he loves us and cares about us. It doesn't matter what we do, those things are right there next to us all the time. But I love how David says, your goodness and love will follow me, will back me up, will chase me down all the days of my life. And then this last just gushing part of what he says and I get to be in his house forever. I get to be with God forever. That shepherd, it's not just a temporary thing. Me and him, I get to be in his presence forever. You just hear him gushing, about some of those things. What would it be like if you just meditated and read this to you? Who would you become if you read this to yourself every day? There's an elder that we know of that he reads this every day when he wakes up. Just reads it, and it shapes him. It forms him. How would this shape you if you read it every day, letting it come and meditate, meditating in it? Which of those lines stands out to you the most right now? Probably each one of those stood out to each of us for a different reason. But in the midst of a world full of challenges, how lucky are we that we get to wake up every day and be in the presence of Jehovah Rohi, the Lord, our shepherd. It's a privilege to have him as our shepherd. It's also a privilege to partner with him in shepherding others. And, we want to talk a little bit more about that now, just kind of quickly go through just some practices that have helped us, as we've been trying to partner together. And of course, everyone has a different, environment and what kind of situation. And so hopefully it just jogs some of your thoughts, with some of this. But, good shepherds, they don't just start caring about the sheep when they're good for wool and milk, later, or whatever else sheep are good for later on, right? That's not when they start caring about them. They have an intentional plan for when the sheep come into their care through when they leave. And sometimes, I think we need a unified plan of how do we care for families, for kids, from the minute that they come into our care to the minute that they leave, some of our care and even beyond. Because sometimes I think in youth and children's ministry, we rely so heavily on great people, but don't have great infrastructure to support, some of those kinds of people. It's like relying on great dancers, but having a bad dance floor that you're working on. Or all the dancers kind of dancing to a different song and not really having a unified plan together. We need a system where both can flourish. I remember when we took the youth and family job, I said, I don't really want to take this job if there's nothing happening for the young families. Because then I just feel like I'm just kind of trying to undo things, or I'm trying to fix things that already happened. And so, or I feel like I'm just working on the branches and nothing's kind of happening for the trunk of the tree, And so much of my priority as a youth and family minister coming into this role is saying, I really need to make sure stuff is happening for parents when they become parents, and all the way up through the teen ministry and beyond. But we need each other. I love what the Boston crew always says, if we're better together, we make a great team. So how do we partner together? We have just 5 practices we're going to go through quickly because I know we're kind of running out on time. But here's just some 5 practices that have helped us partner together. The first one is just to, take the the next best small step. I'm just going to talk about that a little more.
Yeah. Ooh. Nope. I'll come here. Yeah. Sometimes you're not set up naturally with the situation that best works for your church. So I know for us, we didn't wait for someone to say, hey, children's ministry and youth, could you guys start meeting together and work together? So we just did it. We just started meeting together with whatever team you have, whether that's an elder in your church, a deacon, a shepherd, a friend, a volunteer. Just start something. Start meeting together. And for us, we called ourselves the family team. We're going to be the family team. And we just started meeting together. And this wasn't something anyone asked us to do, but we wanted to be encouraging together and leaning on one another. And we started meeting together consistently and communicating consistently on our own. It wasn't something that anybody asked for us to do. And having partners really made me feel, as a children's ministry leader, less alone. My husband works a secular job. He owns a company. And so oftentimes I am doing things by myself. And I know some of you are volunteers. And so you might feel like, oh, I'm just out here trying to do the best I can. And youth and family gets all the money. And, you might feel different feelings. But I just remember thinking, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait for anybody else to help us get unified. We're going to get unified on our own and have that partnership and enjoy that partnership.
Yes, that's number one. Another one is just to value and respect each other's strengths. Sometimes from the 2 ministries, we don't always really value, what the other one brings to the table. Sometimes as a youth minister, you can be like, yeah, whatever the kids do, great, and then I'll see you when they come into middle school or whatever, or feel like they're too strict down there anyway, or sometimes, children's ministries can be like, have just some opinions about youth ministers. I know you think we're always incredible, and stuff like that, but you might have some opinions about your youth ministers. But I think it's so important that we value and respect what each other, brings to the table. And Brie, I know, has worked a lot with Melissa on some of that too.
Which mic do I choose? Melissa and I, we'll talk a little bit about friendship later, but Melissa also happens to be brilliant, so that's a gift. But because children's ministry, you guys are like so amazing with the safety policies and the procedures, and youth ministry really needs that. And so I will call Melissa often, like, hey, help me understand, hey, volunteer this situation. But the more that we've talked, the more over the years, the more I know how Melissa's brain thinks, the why behind what she does, her what's the word I'm thinking, her ministry philosophy and her children's ministry philosophy that helps me really familiarize myself with like, all right, these are where the kids are coming from. And as they come in, it's just really built a great trust and like open doors of communication with us. And I know her strengths, she knows mine, and we're constantly calling each other ministry and beyond. But that's, been huge for our ministries.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, with children's ministry, I think we got to be careful not to micromanage youth ministry and try to get them to have their program look like our program. The youth is more free-flowing, right? It does have different parameters. So sometimes you have to say, okay, that does need to look different. They drive kids, they have a different space, but both can be safe.
Yeah, number 3, I think it's really important to get children's ministry, young families a seat at the table. We had a huge vision process we went through as a whole church, where it's like, what's going to be our vision for the next, 5-7 years? And we needed Melissa's voice in that room. Sometimes the children's ministry voice isn't in that room of what's going to be the vision of how we approach, what's our future of the church. Having some children's ministry and young family ministry in that room is so helpful. It was so helpful that we literally restructured our entire church to really cater to the young families. We reorganized the whole church, set up a youth and a village ministry is what we call it, which is a young families ministry. So it wasn't just youth and family and kids, but we had a young families ministry. We put some of our best people in our church in that ministry. Jordan and LaToya Massey saying you guys are helping lead that ministry with your team and Melissa. But that was so important to us because sometimes I think their voices get lost, and then they have to fight for a voice instead of just being given a voice. And it's so hard talking to different ministries that feel like they're fighting all the time, just to kind of have a voice for the people that they care about. But they need to kind of be, and I think that's important for if you're a youth and family person, that you fight for the voice, of the younger families. Not just your own teen situation, but how do you fight for, the younger families as well, and helping them, have a seat at the table. It's so helpful having Melissa in our staff meetings. She's there every week, so she is able to give a voice, to what we do on a week-to-week basis. And so if you can even pop in for, once a month or every other month into a staff meeting, or just kind of give some of your thoughts, or invite, some of the children's ministry volunteers into your meetings, every once in a while, that stuff is so helpful just to give them a voice for a really important group, that they lead. And I'm just going to keep going to the next one. The last 2 are just having events together. So have a 5th grade graduation together, VBS kind of stuff. Capitalize on transition moments. Of course, with the campus ministry, having different events with the campus ministry, communicating with, all the families as a unit instead of kind of always in different pockets. But I think try to have a few events a year where you're doing stuff together and your partners together in that way. And the last one is be actual friends. Be actual friends. And Brie's going to talk more about that.
More just, I love the, love covers over a multitude of sins. And I think love covers over a multitude of infrastructure lack. And love covers over a multitude of, I don't know how to do this and I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm going to love you. And so this is just a fun little slide that we loved putting together of just all of our children loving each other within this family. Our children, that's me holding Will way in the corner, and now that's Will holding our son. And, he's a teenager now, but just fun. I think us just really striving to be actual friends and be in actual life together as a family has really helped bridge the gap in our ministry. And so I don't know if that's possible at all in your situation, but wherever you can build friendships across the ministry, just real, genuine, actual friendships. The minute I got pregnant with our oldest, Melissa was like a lifeline for me. And in many ways she inserted herself. But my sister sent her flowers from the hospital because of just how much she had done for my family and just the lifeline of just encouragement she was. But in other words, since we've become parents, her kids are a huge part of our family life and all of that. And now Nick's studying the Bible with her oldest Will, and her middle daughter is like my little sister. And so, but just that relationship I think has helped in the ministry a lot because we also know how our families are being raised, and love covers over.
So anyway, you might hear all that and you're like, man, I lack a lot of that kind of stuff, which means we didn't get the first part, you know? And so to me, you can't do ministry unless we have that first part. The Lord is our shepherd. We lack nothing. What do you have? That's plenty. Put it in your shepherd's hands. He's going to take care for it. He's going to care for you. Let's just say a prayer, and then and we'll close our time together. God, you are our shepherd. We lack nothing. You're the one that makes us lie down in green pastures, leads beside quiet waters, refreshes our soul. God, even when we go through the darkest valleys, your rod and your staff, your hand is right there to guide us, to walk through it with us. You anoint our head with oil, God. Your goodness and your love chase us down, follow us wherever we go. God, who are we that we get to dwell in your house forever? We're so lucky. We're so lucky to have you as our shepherd. God, we love you. Thank you for shepherding us. Help us be good sheep, you know. Thanks for caring. In your son's name we pray. Amen.